Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements.
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Before we jump into today's topic, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. Alright, let's get into it. Ilhan Omar is always making waves. She is always in the spotlight, and usually not for the reasons you want a member of Congress to be trending.
A1 of Rule 9, I seek recognition to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows.
Recognized.
Censuring Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Whereas elected members of Congress take an oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the United States without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Whereas Representative Ilhan Omar took an oath of allegiance to the United States upon becoming a citizen, declaring, I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen. Whereas on January 27, 2024, Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements. Whereas Representative Omar said she has spoken to many Somalians who asked her to intercede for the Somali government by pressuring the United States government into certain actions. Whereas Representative Omar assured the Somalians she spoke to, the U.S. government will only do what Somalians in the U.S. tell them to do. They will do what we want and nothing else. They must follow our orders, and that is how we will safeguard the interest of Somalia. Whereas Representative Omar continued, for as long as I am in U.S. Congress, Somalia will never be in danger. Its waters will not be stolen by Ethiopia or others. Sleep in comfort knowing I am here to protect the interest of Somalia from inside the U.S. system. Whereas George Washington warned in his farewell address of 1796 to guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism, and further declared citizens by birth or choice of a common country, that country has a right to concentrate your affections. The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. Whereas these statements by Representative Omar clearly violate the oath she took as an elected member of Congress to defend and protect the United States Constitution. Whereas Representative Omar has exhibited the treasonous tendencies George Washington warned about, and her actions must be condemned by all members of Congress who adhere to the oath they took upon assuming office. And whereas by openly admitting her efforts to advance Somalia's interest using her position as a United States representative, Representative Omar has revealed herself to be a foreign agent acting on behalf of a foreign government. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota be censured. Representative Ilhan Omar forthwith present herself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure. Representative Ilhan Omar be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker, and Representative Ilhan Omar be and is hereby removed from the Committee of the Budget and the Committee on Education and the Workforce.
So here's the heart of it. Ilhan Omar made remarks at an event in Minneapolis where she appeared to promise that the United States government would act according to the wishes of Somali Americans, and even that U.S. officials would follow our orders. Let me be clear here. You can be proud of your heritage. You can champion your community. But promising to protect the interests of another nation from inside the U.S. system, that's not something you gloss over. That's not just rhetoric. That's a statement that naturally raises red flags.
Muslim and Antifa domestic terrorists are bailed out and supported by our now Vice President Kamala Harris. George Floyd died on May 25th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As you see here, on June 1st, we have then Senator Kamala Harris and then vice presidential candidate for the United States tweeting a link to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, encouraging people, if you're able, chip in now. Spend some more money to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. But yet we know what was going on. These were not protests. These were violent riots. I'm sorry, you can't stand in front of a city on fire and people fighting and say, it's a protest. It's a riot, and it's not peaceful. In fact, Kamala Harris and, unfortunately, my own colleague from Minneapolis, Ilhan Omar, have shared links to the Minnesota Freedom Fund with their millions of Twitter followers. And you know what? It raised a lot of money for the Minnesota Freedom Fund. In August, the Minnesota Freedom Fund reported that it had raised $35 million in donations. Yes, when the Democrat candidate for the Vice President of the United States says donate to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, people donated. When the Congresswoman from Minneapolis, Minnesota, shared on her Twitter to millions of followers and said, pointed down, meaning follow suit, donate, guess what? They raised $35 million. And guess what happened from that? As a result of all the money raised by then Senator Kamala Harris and then the Democrat Vice President candidate of the United States, now our current Vice President, and current Congresswoman from Minneapolis, Minnesota, 184 domestic terrorist criminals that rioted, 184 of them were bailed out from the Minnesota Freedom Fund. The criminals they helped bail out include a woman who shot at the SWAT team, another woman who is accused of killing her own friend, and a convicted rapist. That's just a few of the people that were bailed out with the money raised directly for the Minnesota Freedom Fund by then Senator Kamala Harris and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, shared on their own Twitter pages. Can you imagine if a Republican Congresswoman or Congressman or a Republican senator or a Republican president shared a bail bond link and said bail out the protesters from January 6th? Can you imagine the result of that? It would be unreal. There has been no lashback. There has been no consequences. There has been no action taken from this irresponsibility, supporting domestic terrorists who are responsible for violence, crime, and costing the innocent American people an exorbitant amount of money, stress, ruining communities, ruining people's livelihoods, and tearing apart our country. No accountability whatsoever. The criminals, these Democrat lawmakers have also voted for defunding police departments across the country. So while they also raise money for domestic terrorists committing crimes to be bailed out of jail, at the same time, they legislate and vote to defund police.
Now, let's be honest. This isn't the first time Omar has sparked controversy with comments that seem to downplay American interests while elevating foreign ones. People remember some people did something remark about 9/11. They remember her comments that sounded sympathetic toward organizations most Americans would consider hostile. They remember the back and forth over anti-Semitic tropes and foreign policy positions that consistently seem to cut against U.S. allies. So when you put this new speech in context, the reaction isn't coming out of nowhere. It's rooted in a pattern, and patterns matter. If you repeatedly make statements that question America's moral standing, elevate foreign governments, or blur the line between cultural identity and political loyalty, eventually people are going to ask, who are you working for? Whose interests are guiding you when you vote? At the end of the day, this isn't just about one event or one resolution. It's about a deeper concern, whether Ilhan Omar consistently puts America first, or whether she tries to pull U.S. policy toward priorities shaped by another nation. So yeah, people have a right to be upset. They have a right to question it. And they have a right to demand better from their representatives. Anyway, that's my take. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for more commentary.